Waking up tomorrow and realizing your biggest monthly bill is gone. No rent, no landlord, no message saying your rent just increased again. For millions of Americans, housing is the single biggest expense in life. In many cities, people spend 30, even 40% of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. But hidden across the United States, there are places quietly living by a completely different set of rules. Places where housing costs are incredibly low. Communities where rent barely exists. And in a few rare cases, places where rent has been removed entirely. In this video, we're exploring 10 places in America where people are living with little to no rent in 2026. Some of these places are small towns that never became expensive. Others are unique communities that share resources instead of charging rent. But every location on this list comes with its own trade-offs. So stay until the end, because the number one place on this list has eliminated rent completely for more than 50 years. Let's start with number 10, The Farm, Tennessee. Deep in the rolling countryside of Tennessee, there's a community that decided decades ago to rethink the idea of housing. It's called The Farm. Founded in the early 1970s, this intentional community covers more than 1,700 acres of land. But unlike traditional neighborhoods where every house belongs to a different owner, the land here is managed collectively. Residents don't sign typical leases, and most people don't pay traditional rent. Instead, they contribute to the community itself. Some residents work in organic gardens. Others help maintain shared infrastructure. Some teach classes, and others support healthcare, education, or food production. Housing here isn't treated like a product that's bought and sold on a market. It's part of a shared system. Because of that structure, many residents live without the usual pressure of a monthly rent payment. Of course, this lifestyle isn't for everyone. Joining the community requires commitment. People must be willing to cooperate, participate, and live in a way that's very different from typical suburban life. But for those who choose it, The Farm shows that housing doesn't always have to follow the traditional rules, and it's only the beginning of what's possible. Number 9. New Haven, Connecticut. Now let's switch gears, because escaping rent doesn't always mean living in a rural community. Sometimes, cities themselves create programs that make housing dramatically more affordable. New Haven is a perfect example. This historic New England city offers one of the most generous homebuyer assistance programs in the country. Qualified buyers can receive up to $20,000 in down payment assistance. And here's where things get interesting. The assistance comes as a forgivable loan. Each year you live in the home, a portion of the loan disappears. After 5 years, the entire amount can be forgiven. In other words, the city is helping residents transition from renters to homeowners. And in some cases, local employers offer additional housing incentives. When programs stack together, the barrier to owning a home becomes much smaller than in most American cities. Of course, living in New England still means cold winters, but at least you're dealing with the snow in a place that's actually yours. Number 8. Earth Haven Eco Village, North Carolina. Hidden in the Blue Ridge Mountains is a community that looks like something out of a nature documentary. Earth Haven Eco Village. Unlike traditional suburbs, this place was designed from the beginning to reduce living costs. Homes here range from tiny cabins to natural houses built with sustainable materials. Solar power is common, water systems are shared, and many residents grow food locally. Instead of paying rent to a landlord, people often invest directly into the community itself. That dramatically lowers monthly expenses. Utilities stay low, housing costs remain stable, and the overall cost of living can feel very different from life in a major city. Of course, Earth Haven isn't built around luxury. Life here is simpler. But for many residents, that simplicity is exactly the point.
Number 7. East Wind Community, Missouri. In rural Missouri, another community has taken shared living even further. At East Wind Community, rent really doesn't exist. Instead of each person managing their own finances, the entire community operates on an income-sharing system. Businesses run by the community generate income through manufacturing and food production. That money goes into a collective pool. From there, it helps cover housing, food, utilities, and other basic needs. Residents contribute labor to keep everything running: cooking, farming, maintenance, administration. Time replaces rent, and because expenses are shared, individual monthly costs remain extremely low. The system has been running successfully for decades, which proves that different economic models can create different housing realities. Number 6. Harmony, Minnesota. Not every place on this list is an experimental community. Some are simply small towns that never became expensive. Harmony, Minnesota is one of them. Located in the southeastern part of the state, Harmony has managed to maintain relatively stable housing costs for years. There are no luxury high-rise buildings, no huge waves of speculative investors. Just a quiet town where homes remain affordable by modern standards. For retirees, remote workers, and people looking for a slower lifestyle, places like Harmony offer something rare: predictable housing costs. Sometimes that stability is just as valuable as eliminating rent entirely. Number 5. Victory Gardens, New Jersey. New Jersey is often associated with high housing costs, but one tiny town breaks that assumption: Victory Gardens. This small borough was originally created during the 1940s as a housing solution for working families. The goal was simple: keep housing permanently affordable. Decades later, that mission still influences the town. Homes here are modest, large luxury developments are rare, and housing prices have remained far lower than in many nearby areas. For residents, that means housing expenses often feel manageable instead of overwhelming. Number 4. Slab City, California. Now we arrive at one of the most unusual places in America: Slab City. Located in the California desert near the Salton Sea, this off-grid settlement exists outside the traditional housing system. There are no standard property deeds, no conventional landlords, and no typical utility infrastructure. People live in RVs, converted buses, and makeshift homes built on old concrete slabs left behind by a former military base. Because the land isn't part of the normal housing market, there's no rent. But life here comes with serious challenges. Summers can be brutally hot, services are limited, and daily life requires a high level of self-reliance. For some people, it represents freedom. For others, it highlights the extremes of escaping the housing system entirely. Number 3. Dancing Rabbit Eco-Village, Missouri. Back in Missouri, another eco-focused community has quietly created a different approach to housing: Dancing Rabbit Eco-Village. Founded in the late 1990s, this community was built around sustainability and long-term affordability. Homes are often constructed by residents themselves. Natural materials are common, shared infrastructure helps keep costs low, and the land is held under community ownership, which protects it from real estate speculation. Because of that structure, housing costs remain dramatically lower than in most traditional towns. Residents trade convenience for stability and financial freedom. For many people, that's a worthwhile trade. Number 2. Loop City, Nebraska. If you're searching for a place where housing prices never exploded, Loop City, Nebraska might surprise you. This small Midwestern town has remained largely untouched by the housing speculation that reshaped many American cities. Population growth has been slow, large investors never arrived, and because of that, housing prices stayed relatively low. In some cases, homes cost less than what people pay for a single month of rent in major metropolitan areas. Loop City isn't flashy, isn't trendy, but its quiet stability is exactly what keeps housing affordable. For residents, that can mean something incredibly valuable: financial breathing room. Number 1. Twin Oaks Community, Virginia. Finally, we arrive at the place that might be the most fascinating example of rent-free living in America: Twin Oaks Community. Located in central Virginia, this community has been operating since the late 1960s, and for more than 50 years, rent simply hasn't existed here. Residents contribute labor to community businesses and shared responsibilities. In return, the community provides housing, food, utilities, and basic necessities. There are no individual rent payments, no grocery bills, no separate utility accounts. Everything operates through a shared system.
Housing is stable, expenses are predictable, and residents don't face the constant pressure of rising rent prices. It's a model that has survived decades of economic change, and for the people who live there, it offers something many Americans rarely experience: complete freedom from housing insecurity. So, what do all these places have in common? They challenge the idea that rent is unavoidable. Some rely on cooperation, some rely on small-town stability, and others step completely outside the traditional housing system. None of them are perfect, but together they reveal something interesting. Across the United States, people are quietly experimenting with different ways to live. Now, I'm curious, which of these places surprised you the most, and could you actually imagine living in one of them? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy exploring unusual towns, hidden communities, and affordable places to live across America, make sure you subscribe, because the next place we explore might completely change the way you think about housing.